Yeah, good evening, viewers and fellow catfish farmers. Now I want to talk about a couple of ingenious devices that I put down here. But before then, the talk is more about fish farming and then especially catfish. Like we know, the African mud catfish, Clarias garipilis or Clara lalera, you know, it's one of the most cultured fish, and Nigeria seems to be the leading country doing that now. We haven't assisted in catalyzing the revolution since 1997. But then somebody ordered for this now, and I said, let me just do a quick video before we supply. Now, I'll tell you about this a little while. Now we know for catfish, 4 things stand up for catfish. The first one is the fact that catfish can be mass-produced. The fingerlings, lend itself to a lot of production. One fish giving you anything from 20 to 30,000 babies, unlike our big brother here that I'll talk about later, the Pacu fish. This one can give about 250,000 babies. This is almost like a senior brother to catfish, but we'll come to that later on. But one thing catfish has standing for it is quick growth, and then you can actually concentrate them almost close to 100 to 300 catfish per square meter. Then we still have this, tasty flesh, acceptable to the community all the time. Pepper soup, every celebration for the protein intake. I get it, complain of protein and all the rest. Fine. But 2 things actually make the sales of 3 things make the sales of catfish, the business of catfish, challenging. The first one is the feeds. I'm going to make a video about that later on. How do you circumvent this feed issue with the greatest recurring costs? Then the second one has to do with water. I'm going to do another video on that later, where we'll talk about the ingenious ways we've been able to overcome that challenge of water too, which has to do with acidic water in cities. I will come up with what they call alkalizer to bring down the pH so that the bones of the fish can be strong, and then they can withstand and come up with big size, big sizes for those who really want to use them as pepper soup, in barbecues and the rest. Then number 2, this issue of water is another one too. Like I mentioned, alkalizer is one. The number 2 is aeration. The number 3 is the LED device to make them have natural spring water access. The LED device, it's a device that gives them scale energy to boost their immune system and make it see they have access to natural spring water. So it boosts the immune system and actually mitigate against the need for medications when you're doing your fish farming. A couple of people, farmers, have been enjoying it in 2017. Now, we'll come do a video about that later on. But the real thing I want to talk about now is this factor of uneven sizes growth. Just like we human beings, we don't grow at the same size. We've got the midgets or the dwarfs. Got a couple of them you see in Nollywood, as jesters and all that stuff, Then you have the basic people like me, average height 1.5 to 1.7 meters, and then you got the tall guys, the basketballers and all. Same way too, we have the catfishes too. We grow different sizes, right? We've got the shooters, like I used to say in some of my former videos. We've got the area boys, we've got the laggards, we've got the gentlemen, and then we've got the shooters. I think I have about four different size classes. Okay, we'll talk about first of all, the shooters. Then we've got the area boys. Then we've got the gentlemen, and then we've got the laggards. Now, then the real challenge is for people who have large ponds, earthen ponds, that are large. Now, once you put your fish there, you buy fingerlings and you put your fish in there in the ponds, it's almost bye-bye till they grow. Let's say you put 1,000 fish in a particular pond. How many fish do you think you'll see eventually? I'll tell you, you're going to see just about 650 if you're lucky. Sometimes even 400. Why? The moment you don't, apart from the fact that nature and genetics are predisposed to different sizes, the next thing is this issue of inadequate feeding. Expertise about where to feed, how to feed, and then the money to actually purchase the food to give them, and then the food quality. So this exacerbates the different size classes. So what do you do? So what you do in 18 ponds really is to make sure that you have the fish at about jumbo size, right? Now, from jumbo size, it's going to grow to the mega jumbo. Then from there, you're going to have the the melange, and then from there, you have the one for the table size, and then you now have the giant sizes, right? Now, let me just explain why we have these 5 classes. The first class of what I call sorters. Now, this is the first one. Now, the size of this first one is about 0.5 inches, right? And this is for the one you call the juveniles. Once you put your juveniles in, right inside the water, like that, the ones that are excessive, that are bigger, will be right on top, while the ones that go under are the ones that are about the same size class. So they don't end up cannibalizing themselves. So they don't have to embarrass you because you don't have money, enough money for food, or you're not feeding appropriately, or you're not feeding constantly, right? Then the second one, of course, is this size. Now this size is the 0.1. Now this is 0.1. Now this is for the jumbo. Now you see that's a little bit bigger than this one, right? Now this is for the jumbo. And if I have my way, I will advise that to stock anything from you do the jumbo. You can put your fish that passes through here are still looking for the concrete tarpaulin pond stocking, because you can easily grade and sort in the concrete ponds. But once the guys enter the earthen pond, it will be a challenge. So for those who have tarpaulin, concrete, plastics, 1, 2, compulsory. And then of course you can now have this to top up. Now this is for the melange size. Because of the cost of fees now, people end up at about this size before they sell their fish, for those who dry, right? But if you get ambitious and you want to go further, you cannot get it to this next size, which is about 1.2. This is 1.5. Now this is for the melange. So this is for the melange. First of all, the first one is for the juvenile, the second one is for the jumbo, the third one is for the young adults, and then this fourth one is for the melange, and then finally this is for the big guys. This is about 2.5 inches, right? And then for fishes about 1 kg. This is more common amongst folks in eastern part of Nigeria, where they want the pepper soup or the big restaurant stuff, right? So these are compulsory use. But the melange, the melange is meant for those who want to smoke their fish for export or to sell in the open market. So once you can pass through this, you are just okay to be smoked for exports. This is a bit difficult because of preservation issues. But for this, if you want to dry the fish, this is what you get from Bagger Lake plenty of them in the markets, right? Of course, this is cost effective now that everybody is managing somewhere along the line now because of the economy. Now, most people harvest about this stage now, right? So that you can turn over about 4 times in a year, right? So, but let me say one thing clearly. If you look at this fish out there, this guy looking at me here, okay, looking for food. Now, it's the same African catfish, but then it's still an African guy, but this is called the Egyptian. This is not Nigeria now, Congo. This is the Egyptian catfish. Now, what's special about this Egyptian catfish? Now, the Egyptian catfish does not cannibalize as much as the black African mud catfish. It's a development around Egypt by Egyptian farmers, so they're about kind of. Now, it's not an albino per se. What's special about them is that they don't misbehave when you don't even have money for food. I'm not saying zero cannibalism, just like you can't say zero water change when it comes to the recycling system. Same way, you can't say zero cannibalism. But when you have about 20% cannibalism here we just have about 2%. So if you know you cannot afford to buy a sorter, then go for the Egyptian. I'm not saying go for Egyptian wife or girlfriend though, guys. Is that okay? So go for the Egyptian cat. And if you know that you don't even want fish to cannibalize themselves at all, gentlemen, this should be your friend. The Pacu. Some folks call it Brahma for reasons best known to them. But I suggest go for this. This guy can grow as big as my head. Don't shoot my head, please. Now, and they are so tasty. and they grow very fast, and they are herbivorous. So feed bill is lesser, while the the cannibalism rate is 0, because they don't eat as much as they don't eat themselves. God has wired them to eat plant-based materials, herbivores, just like cows don't cannibalize themselves. But if you watch Nat Geo Wild, what happens with lions? After some time, the king lion will still end up being eaten by his folks eventually. Now, if you don't want your fish to eat your profits, go for the slaughter. If you can't afford the slaughter, go for the Egyptian. If you can't afford the Egyptian, go for the Pacu. If you're still confused, give me a call. This is Mr. Fish. I'm only wearing this cap that I bought off market. See you at the next video.